So maybe don't mention it. Do you remember, Alexis?
Tomorrow? No.
Okay, it's fine. All right,
So before you start, just to clarify, so Alexis, you're going to do a little intro, and then you're going to introduce me, and then it's
live. Then you have the floor. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Well, everything's working on the Zoom side. Good to go.
Great, letting them in.
Are we ready? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alexis Willis. I'm the Director of Small Business and Entrepreneurship for the Chamber and run 127,000 square feet of startup community that you probably know as the INCubator on the North Shore. We host experience talks once a month, the first Wednesday of every month, and we try to bring in, well, we don't try, we do. We bring in experts in their respective fields for a power hour of learning. And today we have Reggie Piercy, who I've known for a few years in a couple of different capacities. This has been the most fun, I'll say, is learning from him. He actually helped us craft our mission and value statement. When was that? Has it been like 4 months now?
I think it was in October.
Yeah.
Wow. So even further, yeah. So it's been a while. Well, we've definitely been living up to the mission, and without Reggie's help, then we might not have been known which way to go. So excited about his talk today. Reggie, I'm going to hand you the floor.
Very good. Well, hey, super excited to be here today. Welcome. I see a lot of faces that I know on the screen here. Mary May, Jill Allen, Jeff Rector, Alan Panato, and then people that I have heard of in the community too. So Elaine Merritt, thanks for being on. I've heard much about you, obviously, through Sandler. So it's great to have you here too. Hey, just to kick off here, if you could go ahead and find your chat channel. I'd like for you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being high, okay, 1 being low. What's your familiarity with DISC that we're going to talk about today? Again, 1's low, 10's high. How would you score your knowledge currently on DISC? Go ahead and send that to me in the chat channel. A 7, a 6, a 8, a 0, a 4, a 9, a 6. Oh, got Ben Carnes on the call too. Welcome, Ben. Very good. Well, it looks like we got a nice distribution there. So I always like to start off with that. Rule number 1 when you're doing a presentation is know thy audience, right? So that'll really help me to kind of, as I'm going through this journey. So I do have a few housekeeping notes here. If you do have a video camera, it's great to turn it on. If you do have one, this makes it more interactive. It's great if I can see your face as well. If you have your Zoom name, you need to update it. Sometimes it has a generic name on it, so you can go to the top right of your cam. You'll see those 3 little dots right there, and you can update your name. I'd like for you to use the chat feature as we go through. So at any time in my presentation, you have a question or you have a comment, anything that's on your mind, go ahead and share it in the chat channel. I have it right in front of me, and I'll make sure I pull it into my presentation. So if you could go ahead and chat in your name and your company right now, we'll use that for our roll call, just for our record. And in a couple places where you can take a screenshot and obviously participate and have fun. So if you have your Zoom settings set, a little trick with your mic, you can actually hold down your space bar and it'll take you off mute. But you have to have the setting in Zoom set up that way. So it's just a quick way to unmute your phone or your laptop or your mic and be able to speak. So you might want to try that right now to see if that works. If the spacebar is not working on your personal Zoom account, again, you can go into the settings and change that. It's a nice little cool feature. And before we start, any questions? Everybody good? Everybody can hear me? Everybody can see me? Give me a thumbs up on the screen. We're good to go. Hey, Alan, I can see you now, sir. Ben?
Yes, sir. Reggie, how are you, sir?
Great to be with you. Thanks for attending. All right, I'd like to start off a little exercise here. So as you can see this gentleman in the picture, he's got his arm out with a circle. So I'd like for you to find an object in your room where you're at right now that's small enough to fit in that circle. So hold your hand out, make a circle as that gentleman's doing, and then keeping both eyes open, I'd like for you to put that object right in the center of that circle. Okay, so find something small enough that you can put in that circle that's in your room right now. Keep both eyes open. Okay, now I would like for you to close your right eye. Okay, now open it. Now close your left eye. So keep your hand out there, close your right eye, and then open it, and then close your left eye, and then reopen it. So if you can use your chat channel, let me know which eye kept the object in the circle when you closed your eyes. Was it your right eye that kept the object in the circle, or was it your left eye? Go ahead and chat that in. Mary May says it was her right eye. Alan's the right eye. A lot of right eyes here. Jill Allen, right eye. Jennifer Beamer, right eye. No lefts yet. Any left eye dominant out there? This might be the first time ever I've done this, and it's 100% right eye. It generally goes about 80-20. So, oh, there we go, Alexis, left eye dominant. Very good. So what's the point of this little exercise we just did? When we go through DISC, we're going to be learning about different behavioral characteristics. And the main point that I want you to take away with, if you don't remember anything today, is that this is not about putting people in buckets, okay? This is about understanding people and hopefully being able to value the differences in others. That's really the why behind all this. I hate when people go to a class and they learn something about personality or behavioral traits and then you get stuck in a bucket, right? That is not what this is about. This is about understanding at a deeper level. And so unless you have a physical limitation, when you are focusing with your eyes and you're putting that object in the center, you are using both of your eyes to do that, okay? But naturally, you preferred one over the other to focus with. And as you can see from the chat channel, most of you focused with your right eye. But you used your left eye as well to put that object in that circle. And so as we go through DISC, the main point here is that we're going to look at 4 different behavior types. You use all of them, okay? You use all 4 in any type of situation. But naturally, you're going to have a preference over 1 or 2 of the 4, okay? So as we go through, I don't have the fancy assessment to do that you typically do online, but we're going to go through and just do a little sort, and I'm going to see where you think you fit at as far as your dominance goes, okay? So we'll have some fun with that and see where you think you naturally fit. You're most dominant in these 4 characteristics that we're going to take a look at. So my 2 main objectives, understand what those 4 behavioral styles are, and then real important, learn how you can modify to others' preferred mode. Because at the end of the day, you can only control one thing in life, and that's you. You can't control your environment. You definitely can't control your family or your friends or your work environment, but you definitely can modify your natural style to theirs to hopefully increase the communication and ultimately the understanding. So to start off with, I'd like to a little short video here, about 2 minutes long, from Dave Mattson, who's the president and CEO of Sandler Training. He's going to talk a little bit about DISC and the purpose.
Rule number 8, see people through their lens. Use DISC to understand how you and your people see the world so you can lead more effectively. You know, the DISC behavioral model will help you understand how to communicate more effectively with your team and basically anywhere else. You've got to understand and acknowledge how they interpret the world, how they communicate, how they want to be motivated, how they see the world, where you then can adapt your style to match theirs. That's right, you've got to match their style. See, as a leader, you get paid to be a great communicator and a great motivator. And if you believe that, then you have to communicate and motivate in a way that they see the world, not motivating them the way that you see the world, and hopefully they get it. Everyone sees the world differently. I've got 5 kids, and they all see the world differently. When I explain what we're doing in a family vacation, I've got to explain it the way that they get motivated and pumped and excited versus, I'm not doing that. Okay. It's always interesting that when we're impatient and we become a leader, we stop being flexible. The goal is for you to understand the characteristics of dominance, influencers, steady relators, and compliance. That's DISC. Understand the characteristics, understand the communication styles, understand the motivational styles, and when you've done that, then profile each one of your people. Figure out who on your team has those characteristics. Now, most people aren't 100% of anything. We have all four inside of us. But they have a dominant, they have a preference. Figure out what that is. You can take a DISC assessment. You can go online. You can get one from your Sandler trainer. Or you can go through the characteristics and try to do just a gut check on who's who. You're not going to be 100% correct, but it'll be a good start. But once you've identified that for your team and you, follow a couple simple rules. One, know who you are. Know what you need to do so you don't fall back on your style. Like, I'm a D. I want to cut to the chase. I don't want to talk about your weekend. I don't want to hear a lot about how this is going to affect other people. Let's just get the job done. Well, if I know that's who I am, and if I know if I'm impatient, that's who's coming out, when I'm talking to somebody with the exact opposite style, I've got to slow it up. We get paid to change the way we communicate. Once I understand me, I have a better opportunity to understand who works for me. Because ultimately, I am judged as a leader on how my team is doing. If I can create an atmosphere of trust and create an atmosphere where I can coach and train very quickly and get trust where they tell me what's going on, truly tell me what's going on, not what I just want to hear, then we're going to be much better off. DISC as a behavioral style and a tool will help you take your game to the next level. Good luck.
If you could open your microphones right now, I just want to see what resonated with you on that video. What did you hear? Put it in your own words. Who'd like to share that?
I remember the term about equity versus equality when you're dealing with other folks.
Yeah, very good. What does that mean to you, Alan, equity versus equality?
Just like he was saying, you've got someone who you can go right to the point and tell them, hey, look, I need you to do A, B, and C. Then there's a person you're like, I need you to do A, and then here's subcategory A1, A2, A3, then move to B. So when you're either training people or giving people direction, like you said, each person reacts differently to how you communicate with them.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else?
I heard that as a leader, you get paid to connect with them.
That was powerful, wasn't it, Alexis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically you're saying you have a responsibility there, right, as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everybody on this call has an example or even a third-party example of a time when you worked for an organization or a company and the leader maybe moved up through that organization and their ego started getting in the way. The things that made them successful, they got promoted to get to that next level and ultimately maybe to the C-suite. They let their ego get in the way and they become too dominant. And then all of a sudden they start to have turnover problems, culture problems, and they're wondering why. This can really help kind of pull that back. We have clients right now that have gone through this and they attend other training with us. And there's a big paradigm shift. The veil is unlifted and they realize, you know what? I'm the problem. But the good news is I have the power to fix it. I can adjust, I can pivot. I can match and mirror my team to be a better leader. Anybody else? Comments?
I'd say it's kind of an oversimplification, but meeting people where they are.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, it's going to them, right? Versus making them come to you or asking them or telling them to come to you. You're going to them. Very collaborative approach. I will say, too, that for leaders in the C-suite seat right now, maybe it was a 20, 30-year journey to get there. If you're a startup, obviously a shorter journey. I can tell you that the students coming out of the colleges, they're looking for collaborative, supportive, listening cultures. That old school way of, the boss shows up and tells you what to do and tells you how to do it, and then comes to look and see how you did it for accountability. That doesn't work anymore with the new students coming out of college. So that's really important too, to go to them, as Jeff was saying. That's what they're looking for. So a little bit of the history of DISC, just so you know the timeline here. This goes all the way back to Freud and Carl Jung. So you can see the years there. So this is the early or the late 19th century when they were born and lived. in the field of psychology. Their work was really the foundation or the groundwork of what we use in DISC today, but it obviously has been modified. In the middle there, you have Catherine Briggs and her daughter, Isabel Myers. MBTI, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, you might be familiar with that. This is all a lineage, if you will, of the DISC methodology and the foundation of where it comes from. Ultimately, it was William Marston who took their work, all four of those individuals' work, and simplified it to come up with 4 different types of behavior. If you're familiar with MBTI, it can get a little complex and complicated because there's 16 types. Even when people who have gone through it, when I talk to them, I say, hey, what type are you? They always go, I think I'm a E and then an N. And then, maybe they get messed up from there. It's hard to remember, those 16 types. With DISC, it's much simpler. There's only 4. I will say, if you are familiar with Myers-Briggs, that the DISC methodology does not get into whether you're extroverted or introverted. It doesn't get into whether you're organized or spontaneous, okay? Because any of those 4 types can be introverted or extroverted, and any of those 4 types can be organized or more spontaneous. So that's an important point there if you are familiar with Myers-Briggs and those 16 types. That was one way William Marston really simplified his methodology. He didn't get into the E and the I and the J and the P, which is judging and perceiving, which is organized and spontaneous with MBTI. So let's get into it here. I'm going to go clockwise. As Dave Metzen said, there's a D, there's an I, there's an S, and there's a C. So I'm going to go right around clockwise, and we're going to share those behaviors. So the first one is dominant behavior. Dave said that's what he was. He wants to cut to the chase. He doesn't want to talk about what you did on Saturday or the weekend. He just wants to get right to it, and let's get to business, and let's get things done. So what kind of characteristics are shared in the dominant? Well, the first, dominant personalities, they love data, okay? They have a thinking paradigm, so they're very logical, they're very matter of fact. They have a system, and they like that because it's reliable. Working with data, it's very black and white, it's dependable, it's reliable, and you can validate whether or not the data is accurate or not. So whenever you're making decisions, they don't like making decisions based on emotion or hyperbole, opinion, okay? They want to see data. What's the logic behind this? Why are we making this change? Why are we doing this? What are we doing, and when are we going to get it done? So as you heard Dave said, he has a sense of urgency. He didn't want it done today. He wanted it done yesterday, okay? They're always pushing. Along with that, they're very quick. They're very outgoing. So they like to move. These are definitely not people who let grass grow under their feet. They're always pushing to get better. So they're natural problem solvers, and they're natural visionaries. They're always looking forward for the next big thing. So if you think about it, with all the companies around the world, a lot of dominants naturally gravitate to that C-suite because that's what organizations need. They need people that are forward-looking, people that have a sense of urgency at getting things done. So when you think about the dominant, they're definitely your visionaries, okay, as a general rule. Now, keep in mind, some of these characteristics can be blended or shared in some of the other 4 quadrants, but when you think about dominant from a general standpoint, I think visionary is a really good metaphor to have for this type. So with the dominants, because they're like that, they're naturally like that, they can be seen as insensitive to others because they're not naturally good listeners. They have to learn how to listen. All right, your dominants, they're listening to that voice in their head, not everybody else around them. And what they're really listening to is data. They're scrubbing down data, they're researching, they're looking for data to help them in making decisions. They don't naturally gravitate to go ask people their opinions. Well, how do you feel about this, Alan? Do you feel good about this decision? The dominants can learn how to do that, but that's not their nature. Okay. So again, what's the purpose of all this? Once you kind of understand what your nature is, like being right-eye dominant or left-eye dominant, that's the starting gate. Once you know who you are at the core, then you can match and mirror to the other styles. It makes you a better leader. It makes people want to follow you. Because I can tell you that, if I work for a company, I would love having a dominant at the front, especially if you want to be the best, right? Now, if you just want to clock in, clock out, and be average, you probably don't want to work for a dominant because they're going to challenge you every day. They're going to hold you accountable. The next type is the influencer. Now, you'll notice that the dominant and the influencer both share being quick and outgoing. All right, they share that characteristic. But they have a big 180 difference, and that is that influencers prefer working with people. Okay, influencers are very strong in emotion. They're very comfortable going there. They're very expressive. They'll tell you how they're feeling. They're just confident in that area, where a dominant's not. Talking about emotion and talking about feeling, it's a little awkward for them if they haven't learned how to do that. So influencers, when they're making decisions or when they're moving forward, they want to make sure that the people are on board. Okay. So when you think about influencers, these are your natural cheerleaders. They're the energy really of an organization. If you look at an organization, it's very active and outgoing, and there's shout outs going on a regular basis. They love to recognize other people, influencers do, because they're already confident in themselves. They don't get jealous when other people get recognition. They actually love that. They love to see team members get recognition. They think that's the best thing. And why is that? Because that's where they live every day. They're comfortable in that area. They're comfortable dealing with feelings, emotion. That's the juice, right? That's the energy of any organization. So when you take a look at your culture, is it more heavily influenced with influencers? Is it more weighted towards people who are not connected to their emotion or feeling? That's a little awkward to talk about emotion and feeling. That just makes me feel I'm not comfortable in that setting. Okay. So influencers have lots of friends. They love to engage. They go into a room, let's say a social, back in the old days, right? When we actually used to get together instead of through Zoom. You go to association meetings or chamber meetings, whatever it was, and you can mix and mingle. Influencers love that because when they walk in the room, they're looking for people they don't know. Hey, there's Ben over there. I don't know Ben. Or maybe I've heard his name. I'm going to go over and introduce myself. That's what influencers do. They're trying to grow their circle. They love people. All right. The next type is your steady relator. Now notice that your steady relator also has the feeling and people orientation, but they do have a difference from the influencer. They're more laid back. They're more reserved, a little more process oriented. Okay. So definitely not your cheerleader, although they're very pro people. Of all four types, naturally gifted at listening. Matter of fact, I want you to think about somebody right now in your life where you went out and you had lunch or you had dinner, whatever the occasion was, maybe you had coffee, and the other person just really listened to you. I mean, they listened to understand, not to reply. If you've ever had that happen to you, you just walk away going, wow, that was awesome. Man, they asked me like 10 questions. They know more about me than I do now. It's just real refreshing when you run into a steady relator because they love to listen. They're naturally gifted at it. And they're focused on you. They're focused on people, not data. Now, on the backside of that, steady relators are the slowest to change of all four types. Okay? And the reason is they're your cultural ambassadors. They want to keep the culture, steady and going, and they don't want to rock the boat. And so they're very protective of that. So if you bring a change initiative to a steady relator, they're going to ask lots of questions. How are we going to do this? How's it going to impact us? And they're going to ask, how's it going to impact the people? Have we talked to our team about this change? Have we got their input? Have we collaborated with them? Have we included them? That's your steady relators. That's where they naturally go. So here's the good and even the better. Steady relators, once they get on board with change, once they understand that, hey, the people are supporting this change and they want to move forward with it, they will then become your cheerleaders of that change. They'll be the most staunch advocates of that change initiative once they're on board. But prior to that, they'll be dragging their feet. Okay. So maybe you have some team members that you can relate to that you're thinking about right now. Hey, you know, Joe, he was like that. Boy, he was really slow to change, but man, once he got on board, wow, he became the champion of the change initiative. So the reason for that is that they love culture, they love people, they don't like rocking the boat, they like harmony, and they're very reserved in the way they go about doing business. If your role is business development on this call, your role is to grow business or to sell. Of all four of these types, the steady relator has the longest sell cycle. Matter of fact, these are the ones that will look at you in the eye. You've got an appointment with them. You're doing your discovery. You're doing your qualification. And they'll look you in the eye and they'll smile and their head nodding their head at everything you say. And they're very agreeable. And this maybe goes on for 6-8 weeks. And then you get to the close. And Alan, this is when you ask for the business. And they go, Alan, I don't know. I got to think it over. I need some more time. And the whole time you've been mystified thinking, hey, this is going to be an easy sell. Steady relators are the hardest to sell against of all four of these types. So keep that in mind. That's one way you can use this data today if you are in business development. If you run into a steady relator and they're very relational and they're smiling and the body language is positive and they string you along for 6 weeks and then they tell you no, you are in front of a steady relator. The last type is conscientious. Dave said this was compliant. So it goes both ways, but we use conscientious. That's what extended disc uses, and that's what we're reviewing today is extended disc. I might add before I jump into conscientious, extended disc, if you take the assessment, it actually gives you 2 profiles. And I really like that because the 2 profiles it gives you is what your nature is and then what your work mask is, okay, your perceived need to adjust based on your environment. So I get this question asked all the time, you know, well, Reggie, if I take the assessment and I take it 3 years later, will it change? And the answer is yes, it will change. Your work mask will. But now your nature, if you're brown-eyed, you're always going to have brown-eyed. If you prefer to focus with your right eye, you're always going to focus with your right eye, barring any kind of physical limitation. If you write with your right hand, you're always going to prefer your right hand. It's the same with extended disc. The nature is the nature. Okay, the piece that changes is the second profile. Maybe you have a job change. Maybe you have a big life event that changes you. Loss of a loved one that was real influential with you and they're not with you anymore. Something that's major, a life event, can change your work mask or your perceived need to adjust to your current environment. So that's why I like extended disc. It shows you what your nature is, and then it shows you what your current environment is, what you're being asked to be. So conscientious, these are your data analytic folks because they're reserved and they love data. The conscientious naturally gravitate to positions of employment where they can work with data. CFOs, these are natural, they're great. Most of your CFOs have some level of conscientious in them because they love working with data. It's less stress to work with data than it is to work with people, okay? If you have a really high conscientious natural behavior and you're thrown into a human resource position, you can learn to be a great human resource person, but naturally, that's not what you're gifted at, okay? What you're naturally gifted at is taking your time, being reserved, having a system, having a process, and working through data. Working through data from the past to predict the future, okay? That's where they're comfortable at. And that's their power alley. They're naturally gifted at that. Looking at data, see what story it's telling, and then based on that, make a predictive analysis for decision-making with the team. And that's why they're great in CFO positions, because they come in already naturally gifted, and then obviously they're learning more about their craft and becoming even better at it. So that's the conscientious. What I want to do right now is I'm going to move to the next slide. And you'll see in the top right corner, hopefully you can see that based on your screen. I did this based on my laptop and I could read it, but I wanted to use that up there for a cheat note. Because what I want to do right now is I want to bring some characteristics onto the screen. And then I want you to use your chat channel after you get enough on there. And I want you to tell me which of the 4 types you think that is, okay? Based on that 30,000 foot description I gave of the 4 buckets, the 4 categories. All right, here we go. So once you're comfortable, send what you think it is to the chat channel.
What do you think, influencer or?
Yeah, very good. Looks like most of the votes were on the influencer, and that's exactly right. This is your influencer. Currently, there's 32% of the United States is in this influencer category, and they're not really sure why. They're still trying to study this, but this category is actually growing. So as more students are coming out, getting into the workplace, and they're taking the DISC assessment, they're typing out in the influencer category. So I don't know if it's environmental that's causing some of that, plus nature. You know, it's usually the answer is always both. There's no science to this, okay? So I'm expressing my personal opinion right now. But I think because the workplace is becoming more open, you know, there was, before the pandemic hit, you know, cubes were being blown up and it was open workspaces was the call of the day. And people were being more collaborative. Organizations were getting flatter versus the vertical organization charts. And I think that environment, influenced this a little bit because people want to be influencers. They don't want to be in a box. They want to work with people, right? They want to be very social. That's my personal opinion. Okay. So I just want to always when I'm sharing my opinion, I always like to state that on the front end. But look at some of these descriptions here. Very social, very welcoming. If you got an onboarding team, you definitely want to have influencers on that onboarding team as you're bringing people in to the organization in that first 90 days, whatever that looks like. They're always going to be enthusiastic, positive, uplifting. They're going to be creative with ideas. They're going to, like I said earlier, they're going to see the best in others. Matter of fact, when they first meet somebody, they usually give them a compliment. Hey, you look great today. Really like that idea that you came up with in the team meeting yesterday. I think it's spot on. They tend to be more flexible than the other 3 types. Collaborative you see on there. And as we said, they're very quick, very intuitive. They do want to be liked. So a high influencer, if you score really high in this and you know that somebody doesn't like you, it's hard to go to bed at night. It's on your mind. You're like, man, why is Susie upset with me? What did I do? The cool thing about it, high influencers, though, is that they're likely to engage with Susie to ask why, not just let it labor and go on. So they usually call that person out and say, hey, you know, I noticed you've been a little short with me lately. What's going on? Did I do something to offend you? Can we talk about this? Can we get this out? Under pressure, they can be seen as disorganized. That disorganization means mentally, okay? If under pressure they're asked to do something and maybe they haven't talked to their social network yet, they're kind of put on an island to make a decision, they can seem a little disorganized and frazzled by that. So that's what that means. Obviously, fear social rejection because that's where they live. That's where they get energy from. And then when they make decisions, they always ask about who. Who is this going to impact? What kind of changes will this happen with our team if we make that? Have we talked to the team? Okay, so they're very inclined with the team and the who. Any questions on that before I move forward? Okay, the next one. I do have some famous influencers here for you, so probably no surprises there. And then what I'd like for you to do right now, you'll have an opportunity to adjust these buckets here, these categories. What percent of these 4 styles right now that you've heard of, and I realize that we're kind of at a 10, 30,000 foot level here, starting to drill down a little bit and get granular. The first one being influencer. But what percent would you put in your bucket, knowing that all 4 buckets have to equal 100 when we get done here? What percent of your style, and when I say your style, I'm looking for your nature, okay? Not your preferred work mask, where you're at currently. What do you naturally like to do? What do you gravitate to do? And if you don't care to share what you think your percent is in the chat channel, go ahead and share that if you're comfortable doing that. If you're not comfortable sharing it in the chat channel, at least write it down somewhere. Yeah, I agree with that 60%, Mary May. Mary May and I met at a Rotary meeting. We were like instantly buds, we were like friends. We just talked we could have talked all night. We were talking and when they ran us out of the room at the end. You remember that, Mary May? Alexis, at least 50%. So you're giving half of that. Ronell Sellers, yeah, 75 to 80. Ronell, you're director of marketing, right? So a very customer-faced position. Jill, 70%. Ben, 65.
I don't know that.
All right, very good. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, got a lot of votes coming through for C or conscientious, and that's exactly right. So 27% of the population fall into this category. So you can see conscientious, they love to be precise. They're very organized with their work and their data. They're double checkers and triple checkers. And that's why you see perfectionists on there. They never just do their work and assume it's right. They're always double checking it, if not triple checking the work. So they're very thorough. That's why it makes them really great in that role of a CFO for a company or anything where you're dealing with numbers and data. They make great engineers, obviously. I mean, if you're building a building, right, it's got to be very precise, especially a skyscraper. So they make great civil engineers, electrical engineer, all the engineering fields, they're fantastic at it because there's an exactness in that field that's required. They are very logical. So they don't like to go to A to B to C to Z. Okay. No, it's not A to B to C to Z. It's A, B, C, D. So they like that routine. They like systems. They're very formal, very disciplined, highly responsible. Very rare that a high conscientious doesn't come through on their commitments. Matter of fact, high conscientious usually get their deadlines done a day or two early. So you're never having to follow up with them. They've got their work done. It's accurate, high quality. Under pressure, they can be a little critical. So great best practice here. If you have a high conscientious on your team, you've got to be careful when you go in if you're going to be critiquing their work. So let's say that your conscientious has turned in a report and you see a couple errors on it. Worst thing you can do is just walk right in their office and point out these 2 errors, even though they might be mistakes and errors, because you're damaging the relationship there. Much better to walk in and share the report and say, can you look over this again? I'm not sure that everything is right. Can you look over it one more time for me and just see if you find any mistakes in it? Let them find the mistake because they'll find it. It's just a much better approach to a really high conscientious than walking in and pointing out their mistakes. If you're doing that over time, it's going to damage the relationship. And then you're going to show up for work one day and you're going to find out that Dave has left. Why did Dave leave? But because his work was being overly criticized, overjudged. So fear, criticism of their work, and they do ask why. If they're making decisions, why are we doing this? How does this align with our vision, our mission, our core values? Why are we making this change? Why are we putting this new HRIS system in? What's wrong with the one we have? It works. Set your conscientious. Any questions or comments on this behavior? Okay, we got 2 left. So let's go to the famous conscientious here. Probably no surprises on there. Bill Gates is such a high conscientious that he actually, he lives in Washington State. He actually goes off to his, he's got a mountain home on the lake there, and he goes and stays for a couple of weeks, and he just dies. He's all by himself. No other people are allowed to come, not even his wife. And he goes and he just reads and digests data. He just loves that. And that's how he recharges. So he recharges not being around people. He recharges by reading and reflecting and looking at data and information. So conscientious, what percent do you think you'd put in that bucket? So remember what you put for influencer and how much you got left. How much of your natural style gravitates towards conscientious? So you got Mary May at 15, Alan at 20, Jill at 10, Jennifer at 35. I will allow you at the very end if you need to go and readjust your categories. That's fine. 5 to 10, yikes. Jeff about 30. All right, very good. Let's go to the next one now. So you obviously got 2 left. Here's some characteristics for you. Which one do you think it is of the 2 we have remaining? Looks like everybody got that one right. Very good job. Steady relator, again, same as conscientious, about 27% of the population in the United States. Steady relators are just fantastic team members. You want steady relators to be on your team. They're just so good. Remember, they're the cultural ambassadors for your organization. So that culture that you've established, from your vision, your mission, your core values, what you're trying to become in the community. Steady relators are fantastic to help carry that message forward and cultivate it and grow it. They're going to be staunch advocates of that. They tend to be, like I said earlier, laid back and very peaceful. Remember, they're reserved. So this is not your quick. They like to take their time. That's why they're slow to change. And they are your best listener. They tend to be very sincere and compassionate. They tend to be very modest. If you think about some people on your team right now, but if you give them a compliment in front of other team members, now at the end of the day, they love that, but in the moment, it makes them feel a little awkward because they like to be modest. They like to really focus on the team first and then me second. They do like to finish what they start, so they tend to be very structured, very methodical in their approach to work. Under pressure, keep this in mind too, especially if you're a leader and you have some steady relators on your team. If they're put under too much pressure, they say yes a lot, when really maybe they should say no. And so they're too accommodating sometimes, and they say yes to too much, and then they get too much on their plate, and that causes them some stress. The Their biggest fear is loss of stability. So your steady relators tend to be your most tenured people on your team. They're not jumping around from job to job. When they find a company that is in alignment with their core values and their mission in life, those are close in alignment to the company or the organizations, and they're there a long time. It's hard to pull them out of the organization, not unless it's, in their best interest for their career. Making decisions, they're always going to ask that question, how? And remember, they're plugged into the people, so they're going to ask that question, Mary May, how is this going to impact our team? How's this going to impact our culture by making this change? Is this a good change? Is it in alignment with our mission? Those are the kinds of questions they're naturally going to ask. So any questions on this category, this behavior, steady relator? That's a great question, Jeff. How often is someone balanced? You got 25% in each category. It's very rare. All the assessments that I've seen come through, it's very rare you're 25 across. I have seen it, but it is very rare. So I would say, less, not even 1% of all the assessments I see come through. Generally speaking, the assessments, the norm, kind of the highway of where they fall, there's at least 2 that are dominant, and then sometimes a third. Okay, so the norm is that you're dominant in at least 2 of these categories, and then maybe a little bit in a third. Okay, but it's rare to see it dominant in all 4. That's a great question. Alan said, I find that looking at myself, I juggle all characteristics in some form or fashion. Absolutely. So to that point we made earlier, at some point situationally, you're going to perform in all 4 of these buckets. Really depending on your current environment, the role that you have in your company, et cetera. So remember that when you're adjusting, it's because your environment's asking you to adjust. So when I'm coaching people on this, if I see that they're naturally, let's say a dominant, or let me give a different example. Let's say that they're naturally a high, they're strong in 2 of the categories, influencer and steady relator. Okay, you with me? Influencer and steady relator. Both of those categories are very high on people and feeling and emotion. But in their job, they're a CEO or a COO or a director or a vice president, and they're leading a team. And their boss is asking them to be more dominant. Got to know on the front end that's going to be a high stressful job for that natural IS, because they're being asked to be something that they're not. So there's going to be a lot of learning curve in there to be more dominant when they don't want to do that. All right, be more justice oriented, right? Then harmony related. So if they got a boss that's also very high dominant and they're driving them to be that way, that's probably not a job they're going to be tenured in a long time, because eventually they're just going to tap out. Not unless they learn, and it's the place that they want to be a dominant at work, but knowing naturally I prefer to be an IS. So that's why I like the extended disc. It kind of shows you what your nature is and then what you're being asked to do in your work environment, and you can kind of step back from that. And maybe you can look at what the story, the analytics are saying, and go, well, now I know why I'm stressed out all the time. That's why I like having both of those reports in one assessment. The extended disc is a 36-page report. So when I coach clients on it, it's a report you can use for a year or 2 years. You don't just take it and throw it in a file cabinet and move on. No, you keep it on your desk somewhere and actually time block it into your planning to spend time on it, because it's so impactful. It teaches you how to match a mirror against other types and gives you some strategies on how to do that. So some famous folks here, steady relators. So for you, how would you do your bucket? Okay, obviously we have one style left. So you know which one this is. So let's look at the characteristics of the dominant personality. So earlier I said the influencer was actually growing in the U.S. The dominants are actually decreasing. So the dominant personality style. So that's why I'm thinking maybe it's being environmentally influenced, just because the work environment, more company cultures are more collaborative and open than they are having a person at the top dictate and control and dominate all the decision making through the organization. So it's just, again, that's a best guess, a personal opinion of what's going on. You can see here, you know, if you're going into a battle, or if you're working for, you know, maybe it's in sports even, you want somebody that's confident, right? Somebody that's competitive, somebody that wants to be the best, to naturally lead that organization or that association, because there is a sense of urgency. They are bold, they are courageous, they do take risks, and those risks, when they do their risk taking, it's based on data. Okay. So D's and C's, they like working together. It's a natural piece there that they have. Keep this in mind. I've got the chart up here in the top right. Dominants have something in common with the influencers, and they also have something in common with the conscientious. Dominants have nothing in common with the steady relator. Polar opposites. And vice versa. So dominance can really be, can cause a lot of stress for a steady relator. Think about it. The dominants wanting to change agent. Steady relators don't want to change and want to know, you know, how it's going to impact the people and the team. They're trying to take care of the culture. Those come right into conflicting efforts there. So keep that in mind. Same thing for the influencer and the conscientious. They have nothing in common either. So if you got the cheerleader walking into the CFO's office, they're already going, man, how long are you being in my office right now? I've got work to do. You need to take this high energy out. You're causing stress for me, and vice versa. If you have a lot of change going on, you got your cheerleaders there. The conscientious is talking about the data, and they're losing the influencers. So again, this is where the matching and mirroring comes in. So let's say I am an influencer by nature, and I do have a C-suite position, and I'm asked to be dominant, and I have a change initiative going on, and I have to go to a conscientious to get them on board. Guess what I do? I don't walk in with a lot of hyperbole, and this is the greatest thing, and it's going to be great for the people. No. I walk in with data. I walk in with benchmarks. Hey, here's a change initiative we're looking at. We went out and benchmarked company A, B, and C, and this is the result on the bottom line for the company. That's the kind of talk you want to talk if you're going to go in and sell a conscientious, not your preferred method. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you could use that example on any of these right here. Same for a dominant. If they're going to walk in and talk to that steady relator, they need to match and mirror. Hey, steady relator, we're thinking about making this change. How's it going to impact our culture? Now you're talking the language of the steady relator. Now you're on the same team. All right. Now you're collaborating. All right. You're valuing the difference. You're leveraging the difference versus staying in your dominant characteristic. And that's really if you don't remember anything from the day, I hope you take that away. How to match and mirror to a type that's different from yours to get a better result, especially if you're on the same team, whether it's profit, nonprofit, whatever your vision, mission is of your organization. So here's some famous dominants. And you know what percent you got left. So you can go ahead and adjust if you need to now that we're at the end here with the dominant. You need to adjust your categories. So I'm going to speak from my personal past and experience. I love working with DIs. Again, we said that usually you have a dominance in at least two of the categories. I really like DIs because Ds want to be the best. They're driving, they're competitive, they're accountable, but at the same time, they're relational, and they can be a cheerleader. You can get the people excited about change initiative and motivate. So I love a DI combination. If you have that naturally, a DI, I just think, this is my personal opinion speaking here, I love the DI style to work for or work with. Styles that, can kind of rub me a little bit is that if the person in front of me is a very heavy S and a C, okay, because they're slow to change. It's like, man, we're missing the boat. And so, I don't know if I could work for a SC long term unless they were able to match and mirror to be more the D and the I. So anyway, you can kind of personalize that for yourself and kind of recognize your current situation. What does that look like with the style? So real quick here, just have some fun. If we were going on a car ride, the Ds would want to drive the car the whole way. There'd be no question about it. There'd be no polling. I'm driving the car. The influencer would say, hey, I'm going to make sure everybody's going to have fun on this trip. I'm going to make sure they stay awake. We're going to be conversational. We're going to have a blast. The steady relators are going to bring snacks for everybody. They're going to keep the peace, and they're going to bring the games that we're going to play so we can have some fun. And the conscientious, they're going to have the whole trip mapped out, where we're going to stop for gas, what the hourly details are. They're going to have the whole thing mapped out. So basically, if you look at this, you're taking the natural abilities of each of these and using it to the positive. And that's really, if you're managing a team, that's what you want to do. You want to make sure you have diversity on that team, especially if you have an important project or initiative in front of you. Make sure it's weighted very well with dominance, influencers, steady relators, and conscientious. Let me skip to the key takeaways here. First, knowing what your natural preference is, learning how to identify preferences in others. So the more familiar you get with this, it's easier to identify that. Learn how to match and mirror to their style. What's the why behind that? Better understanding, decision-making, team relations, and organizational outcomes. And if you're a leader of leaders, all four of those resonate with you. How can you use this? These are different ways that our current clients are using it, but definitely improve communication on your team, reduce conflict, help others to value the difference. It helps you to assemble that diverse team that I just talked about. You definitely want to have diversity in your thinking, the way you process. Selection, we have some clients that actually use it for their selection and recruiting, so they know what their preferences are before they hire them. And that's legal as long as you're doing it for everybody. Okay, you can't just do it for a few. You got to do it for everybody if you're going to do that. And then obviously coaching and development. Helping to eliminate blind spots, putting a developmental program together to help them, especially if they're being asked to do a job that's not their nature. So any final questions or comments that you wanted to ask? Something that kind of popped in your mind there? You can use the chat channel or open your mic.
Where do you fit, Reggie, in this scale?
Well, you know me pretty well, so I was going to put you on a spot and see if you could guess, but I'm actually strong in 3 of the categories, so I'm an ISC. I do not have any D naturally.
Chris Chilton agrees. Chris Chilton agrees with that.
Yeah, I had to learn to be the D.
That's exactly my profile.
Natural for me. Go ahead.
That's the same profile I have.
Oh, is that right, Ben? Yeah, ISC.
Yeah, it was just really interesting. The first time I encountered this information, coming to the understanding that, the people that were dominant that I had all these problems with, it was not a character flaw on my part that I was having difficulty with them. I just had to adjust my thinking and my approach to them. And then it works great.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Ben. Ben and I connected really, and now I see Ben, now the light bulb. I know the first time I met Ben, I just liked you, okay? I'm being transparent. I don't know if I ever told you that or not, but the first time I met you, it was like easy to talk to you. So now, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Mary May, if you're still there, thanks for attending. You had to Zoom to another meeting. Rondell, this has been very helpful. I've been pushing for everyone to take the disc at HHM. I'm a longtime customer of HHM too, but Rondell, as you know, when I worked at Vision. Great company, by the way. Love you guys.
It would be great if you got the whole company together, because when people know each other's styles, they can really, really work very effectively as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to bring my information up there if you want to take a picture of that or screenshot. So if you want to reach out to me and keep the conversation going, I love doing this. And so Jill Allen, are you still on the call, Jill, or do you have to drop off? Did I lose Jill?
I think she dropped off. Yeah.
Okay. I actually she invited me into her organization to work with her team. She's got 12 people on her team, and it's been great to go in there and do the disc with them. So I actually come into their organization, Urban Story Ventures, and work quarterly with them doing team building events. So fantastic to come in there and help her. Obviously, she's the leader of that organization with Jimmy White. Any other questions?
Looks like you're getting a lot of thumbs up
Okay.
and pats on the back.
Hey, thumbs up are always good. So
Yeah.
thanks, Alan. Hey, I know everybody's busy with everything going on. I just appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to spend it with me and learn about DISC. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Reggie, for I have about 3 pages of notes and thinking of people that are in each category and how I can adapt to them, in particular my own team. So I appreciate you, everyone that tuned in. Thank you for tuning in on your lunch break. And we'll see you again, same time, same place next month.
Thank you. Stay safe out there.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.